everybody, and welcome back to the locker room. We have a very, very special episode for today. We got our first coach joining us with us today, the head football coach for the Southwest Lions, Mr. Zach Garvey. Thank you
Yeah.
for doing this, man.
Yeah, man. Of course, I'm glad you had me on here.
Yeah,
Glad to be here.
for sure. I knew I needed to get you on because I'm sure that this was going to be an episode that people were going to be super duper excited to see. And you got definitely a lot of knowledge and stuff that you can share to us about football. So let's say we dive into that. Why don't we?
Yeah, let's get after it. I'll try not to embarrass myself.
Well, let's start with this past season, and I'm sure this was a very special first season for you, considering it's your first year taking over the Stallion program and a program that you played for. So, just kind of right off the bat, what was kind of this season like, just as a whole, just for you personally? What was the feelings like taking over the program and being the head coach for the varsity football team for the first time?
Yeah, so it was kind of a full circle moment, made special with the group of guys that I kind of had as seniors that, I don't think I don't know how often it happens, but to come in and to get back in the school you graduated from with a group of freshmen and be their first high school coach as far as, I got them as the JVs and to kind of move up with them. And when they became juniors, kind of take over the defense. And then when they became seniors, take over the program. So, there's obviously a lot of special things with that. And, I kind of like to think we grew together and they taught me things. I obviously taught them some things here and there. And so, obviously the record doesn't reflect kind of the growth and the good times, I guess, if you go off of wins and losses. But, it's one of those things where I wish we could have won more because those kids deserved to win more, and they worked hard and they were a good group of kids. So it was a great year as far as the season goes. Obviously, we could have done a lot better on the field with scoring points and stopping other people from scoring points. But it was a good group to be with, and it's one that I think will stick with me in my mind for as long as I'm breathing air.
Yeah, absolutely. So your first year back at the high school was my freshman year, right? That
Yep,
was
yep. So my first year actually in the building, I got back coaching at Southwest. I want to say either 19 or 20.
right.
And then my first year back in the building was either y'all's freshman year or the year before. I can't remember exactly where it was. It all merges together now, but I want to say your freshman year is my first year back in the building actually teaching.
Yeah. So if you want to, so you were the JV head football coach. That's what you did whenever you came back. So if you want to kind of talk about that experience for the last 3 seasons, it was kind of getting used to those boys that came in as freshmen and that, like you said, grew with you all the way coming up to this year as your first year as your varsity coach. As
Yeah,
varsity.
so coming back, obviously there was a standard when we played there, and then after COVID, it kind of things had changed a little bit. So coming back to coach and getting in the building, there's always some differences that I kind of was shocked by, and kind of had to kind of figure and wrap my head around. But once I did, the kids are still the same. They still work hard and still good kids and still good athletes, and so it was fun. You get back in the building and then get the kids in and kind of recruit the halls and get them out, and so you coach JV. JV is fun. It's frustrating because kids they're boneheads and they don't know much about football, and you got to kind of spoon feed them everything.
Yeah.
So that was the biggest thing and it makes you a better coach, because you have to break down the fundamentals. You got to spend more time on drills and spend more time on, well, why do you do this drill? How does it correspond to football games? And so that you kind of grow with the kids to a degree. At least I did, because you come in and you coach them and you're kind of teaching them the basics and teaching them how the game works. And so, those JV years, you progress them and you get to see them grow. And that's fun. Anytime you get to see a kid kind of grow and kind of evolve as they go, it's really fun. I think that's what keeps people like me in it. It's fun to win games, but it's really fun to see a kid come in as a freshman weighing 130 pounds.
Yeah.
Looks at the weight room, is scared to death, and leaves as a senior. And they're running the weight room.
Yeah.
And they're kind of, know more about football than the average person that watches football.
Yeah. Right.
So.
What was that? Was there anything that helped you and you learned from coaching JV for the last 3 years that maybe helped you this past year coaching varsity for the first time?
Well, I think, you watch on Sundays and you watch on Saturdays and you see all these different, from a defensive standpoint, all these different coverages. They'll talk about cut and mod and cover four and man match and all these different things. And you can kind of get lost in the complexity of
Yeah.
kind of a PhD in football. But, on JV, you gotta be very basic.
Yeah.
You can run the simple things and do just fine. You gotta get the basics down. And so I think that's kinda what kinda grounded me was I had to teach the basics
Yeah.
and get them good at the fundamentals. And you usually did pretty good when you got guys that could get good at the fundamentals, and then when you started trying to get good at certain things, then you could add a wrinkle in, but, then, I think that's kinda what we did this year. We kept it very simple. Defense was very simple, offense was new, so it was simple to a way, but it was new, so there's obviously some learning curves there. But with the JVs, you saw them kind of evolve as the season went in the new offense. And so we're excited for, keeping the simplicity with those sophomores, but maybe adding a wrinkle here or there because they've now got that foundational layer.
Yeah.
But I think basically, what it boils down to is just, it doesn't matter what I know. It matters what they can learn and what they can do. So just keeping it simple and allowing yourself to coach kids to where you coach them within their means and you give them a platform to use their athletic abilities.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned we talked about kind of you starting back my freshman year, and you had your particular group, and that was a group that kind of grew with you. How special was it that your first year as varsity head coach was that same group of guys that you work with your that their freshman year, your first year back, and now it's your first year on varsity, and it's their senior year, and you're getting to work with those guys.
Well, like I said, and I don't want to even like even with the group that graduated last year, with Tyler and Nate and Deontay and Jacob and all those guys and Gavin, that whole group, that first team I had, that the recent grads in this senior class, they were just a good group of kids, great group of kids, kids that are going to go on to lead successful lives, and so the ability to have those freshmen kind of as my seniors this year was really full circle, really good, really special, guys that I hope I stay in contact with the rest of their lives. And so I can kind of see from time to time what they're doing in their life. And, I know they're all going to be successful. So it was really meaningful. It's not like you walk into a new place and you learn the kids and then you get to like them and then they graduate. It was really personal and really special.
Yeah, for sure. I wanna go back to, and this is I think the part that it's the most interesting to me, the part that I want to talk about, but I think that people are gonna want to hear about this the most. I want to kind of go back to that point in period where it's we're trying to figure out who the next head coach is going to be, and this is just me saying it, and I'm biased when I say this, but when it was announced that there was going to be a new person that was going to become the head coach, I mean, I knew that they were going to look at a bunch of different people, but at the end of the day, I knew who they were going to go to. But I just want to ask you, what was that whole experience like in the process of waiting to see if it was going to be you who took over as the program, and kind of take me through the process of that, and whenever you figured out, and what were the emotions and feelings like?
Well, yeah, when Charlie stepped down, obviously I had just gotten to be defensive coordinator, and I had never really thought about, what was after that. Because
Yeah.
I mean, literally after our season ended, I was telling him where we needed to go to start working on our defense for next year and kind of some things I needed. And, we're going through the motions and there's no thing in my head about, being a head coach. But when he stepped down and informed me. I was like, well, I said, I want to put my name in the hat. I know I'm young. I know I ain't, got as much experience. And, the Stallion name is still strong.
Oh,
Still
for
a
sure.
very, very prestigious program. So I knew there was going to be some heavy hitters applying. And there was a few, it was kind of surprised at, some of the names that didn't apply. So, I knew it was odd, but it really, in the beginning, I really was kind of stressing, like, I didn't know I wanted it, but then when it came up, it's like, well, yeah, I want this, because
Yeah.
number one, the kids, I didn't want to leave and, I didn't want the kids to get the wrong thing. I wanted to make sure they were taken care of. And so that was a big, big driving force. I was like, well, I've, played a hand in raising these guys up as far as football and Southwest is home. So, I really wanted it. But what I came to the realization is it's kinda like that, there's an old phrase and, I'm not gonna quote it because 'cause I'll butcher it, but it's kinda like when you try to force things and when you try to make things happen on your end, all you do is get a bunch of stress.
Yeah.
So, it made me really I was sitting in the weight room one weekend working out, and I just looked at the walls, and I was just kinda thinking, and I said, "You know what, God?" I said, "If this is where I'm supposed to be, then I'm gonna be here, and if it's not, then you're gonna take me where I'm supposed to be."
Yeah.
And so when I did that and I did a little prayer and talked to God for a little bit, I got a really good peace about it. And I think that was in it was sometime near Christmas break. Either we had just got out of school, we were about to get out of school, and I don't think the entire break, I thought about the job, didn't worry about the job, got back into work days and kind of checked in on things, had my interview and people would text me and call me and ask, and it never really bothered me. And so, I just had a peace from God that what, He was going to put me where I needed me, and whether it was the head coach at Southwest or staying on at Southwest in some role, or I'd looked at some other possibilities, going to another school, and wherever I was supposed to be, I was going to be there for whatever kids needed me. And thankfully, it was Southwest, and for whatever time that is, and hopefully, it's for the next 30 years of my life. Staying at home and hopefully making an impact on the community and the kids that come through. But, no matter what, I've kinda learned in life, been through some things. It's wherever he needs to take you, you're gonna go, and there's nothing you can do to fight it.
Amen to
You can
that.
you can fight it,
You can try.
but
Yeah.
you get a lot of undue stress and a lot of undue problems the more you kinda struggle. It's his world, and we're just living in it, and you just gotta kinda do what he tells you to do, and when you submit, things kinda just work out better for you. So that was
It's
kinda
wild.
what went through the whole process there. And then I get it, and, I like to tell people it's kinda crazy. I became the 7th head coach on the 7th of January,
Yeah.
so it's kinda funny, 7th there,
Yeah.
and, so it was just full circle moment again.
Yeah. So you get it, like you said, on the 7th. What are those first days like? Because I know how you are. I see it. You're ready to go right away, no matter
Yeah,
no
well,
what right when it ends.
I think it was one of those deals where when it kinda happened, I mean, they called me up there and it was surreal, it was really surreal and, didn't really know, it was like, "Man, here we go."
Yeah.
And, then it was, I sat down and obviously I had to figure out a staff, because
Yep.
most everybody was leaving, retiring or leaving the building, so I had to build a staff. And, so I think within 3 days, I was running and gunning, making phone calls, trying to get people in the building, trying to find people that wanted to come coach, and then I had to figure out what our identity was gonna be other than Stallion football, what that football was gonna be, and then, figuring out what it was and then working on a schedule, working on weightlifting and working on practice plan, and so really, you got a little bit of time to enjoy it, and then it was time to work.
Yeah. I wanna I wanna dial it back a little bit and ask something that will tie into a future question, but obviously I mentioned before that you did play at Southwest and you played under but I'm biased, but he's in my opinion the best coach that this area has ever seen,
Oh,
and
yeah,
it's
hands down,
100%. And
hands
you,
down.
you played for Coach Paget, and the first part of the question is, what was that experience like, getting to play under him? And then the second part that I'll ask you, and I can remind you, is what were maybe some things that he taught you that maybe you're utilizing now,
Mhm.
as you are now in the same position that he was in?
Yeah, so, my position growing up was a little different, because my parents were in the school system. My whole family always joke it's kind of the family business.
Yeah,
Everybody in the family went into teaching or admin or some sort, and I always swore up and down I would never do it, but yeah, here I
here you
am,
are.
and, but so, growing up, I always, was Southwest through and through, went to all the games, and when we weren't at the games, maybe we went to a Carolina game or, went to a state game or whatever it may have been, and, we'd listen on the radio to Mr. Billy and Mr. Melvin, and so, I'd always hear just grew up, staying football, staying basketball, and going all different, games and, on the campus. But, when I got there to play for coach, it was just you walk in the building, he was a different guy.
Yeah,
He commanded the room, but it wasn't in a way that you were fearful of him, but you also didn't wanna kinda ruffle them feathers because he didn't play games, it
right.
was you did what he had an agenda, and you either got on or you were told what was gonna happen if you didn't,
Yeah,
and luckily, I had enough sense to most times not have that conversation, but 1 or
yeah,
2 times. But, just he was just a guy that, we focused on the weight room, which is a big thing that he instilled in me, that's why I played.
yeah,
I was not a gigantic athlete. I wasn't, the fastest kid, I wasn't the strongest guy, but I got in the weight room and I grinded and I worked and used what, God had given me, and I forged a little path for myself there. Um, but that was where that's where he excelled, and that's where I try to excel is finding those guys that, just need an outlet, and,
yeah,
give them the outlet in the weight room and give them the outlet in football, but at the same time, you got to teach them that football and lifting weights very similar to life.
Right.
And, you gotta hold guys accountable. You gotta hold them to a standard, whether they're good or not good, whether they're and what I mean by good or not good, whether they walk in and they've got stars under their name or whether they walk in and they're 130 pounds and don't know if the football has feather or air inside
Yeah.
of it. So that's one thing that I try to emulate from him. The other thing was just discipline and hard work. There's been times in my life where, similar to the interview where, you feel like you backed into a corner and you don't really know your way out and you just gotta put your head down and power through it, and that takes discipline and that takes hard work and kind of rolling your sleeves up and getting to it, and that's what I'm trying to kind of bring back into what we have now.
Yeah. What do you what do you say to the people that maybe try to write a certain narrative about, because I had this conversation with a football player the other day that the people will see already, but I feel like there's an unfair narrative already written on every single Southwest football team that happens from this season and on because of what the past was like. What are your feelings toward the people that already automatically try and write that narrative and try to connect, create the narrative, oh, they should automatically be good because of things that happened in the past? What do you say to people that try to write that
Well,
narrative?
there's a saying, and it's kind of like pressure is a privilege, right?
Yeah.
You know, if you're somebody people know you and they know you for a certain thing, then they're always going to expect it because that's human nature.
Right.
I mean, look at society and look at things and sports, right? Everybody has a team, and your team, like I'm a Miami Dolphins guy.
Yeah.
Only undefeated season ever. And nobody's ever done it again. They've come close, and Miami surely has never done it again,
Right.
you know? But yet that's the standard. So when you look at football at Southwest, you look at how it did and where it was, and we're still, we can still be there. But obviously, some things have changed. The world's changed a little bit, the area's changed a little bit. Um, but it doesn't bother me about a narrative. If people were not worried about Southwest, then that would mean we wouldn't have support, and you can't be mad at people for having a certain feeling about where we're at because for 30 years, Stallion football fueled the community. It's the lifeblood of this community. And so that's where I'm with them.
Yeah.
We got to get it going back the right way. We got to get it going back. And when you look in the mirror sometimes you can see where you maybe have not done the right things, and that's what I got to get the guys to understand that you know we can be competitive with anybody.
Right.
I don't care who you are, where you go, what area you're from, what sport you play. If you show up every single day and you roll your sleeves up and you work hard, I'm not going to say you're going to win every game, but you're going to walk away from the game feeling a lot better than the team that come in that was supposed to dog you
Yeah.
and you took them to the wire.
Yeah.
I like to show the guys an old boxing match from the '90s and the heavyweight, and it was not the heavyweight, but a lightweight, and it was a world championship, and the guy coming in was, real favored, and the guy coming against him wasn't really well known. And long story short, guy that wasn't real well known come out swinging,
Yeah.
and they went to the final bell, and he ended up knocking the other guy out.
Yeah.
And that's kind of our identity. We're the underdog. We're always undersized. We're always undernumbered. And when we finally decide to embrace that identity again, the narrative will match because that's who we are.
Yeah.
But there's always going to be naysayers. There's always going to be people. Heck, I could wear a red shirt and they could say I should wear a blue shirt.
Yeah.
And that doesn't. It's just people.
Yeah.
And that's why you just like I tell the guys, as long as you're with me in this room and I'm with you in this room, we're all doing what we should be doing. We're gonna be good to go at the end of the day.
That's awesome. I want to let's talk about now this upcoming season, and you've got your first year under your belt, and you got your feet planted and everything, and you pretty much who you're going to get back next year, and that's already the mindset. We're already dead set on looking forward to next year because that last first season, it's out there. Everybody knows how you did and everything, but that there's no reason why that narrative can't change. And my question now is, what's the mindset now looking forward going to the next season, and what's the mindset that you're trying to install into your players looking forward to this upcoming season.
Well, I mean, it's kind of what you said. It's a mindset, right? You
Yep.
know, it starts when we get back in the second semester with the weight room. It starts with getting strong. It starts with making sure we're holding each other accountable. In fact, we talked about that today, when I met with some of the leadership guys. And it's you can't want to win games in August and September and October and plan to play in the postseason in November and not have that fire. In fact, to me, you almost gotta have a stronger fire this time of year,
Yeah.
and especially once you get to the warmer months, there's so many distractions, you get to the beach and get outside, and you gotta have a stronger fire then because that's where really you win,
Yeah.
aside from practices, you win in the weight room,
Right.
and I think, kinda ties back to your previous one, why we were so different for so long and going back to Coach Paget, he had it figured out.
Yeah.
When you went into his weight room, we were doing weightlifting, and before I was even there, they were lifting in a way that not many other people lifted, and it was an edge
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, the stronger man is gonna win on the line, especially.
Yeah.
You've gotta I mean, look at Dixon this year. Their power side. I mean, their 3 guys squatted over 600 pounds, JJ squatted 600 pounds.
Yeah.
The weight room and nobody can stop them.
Yeah.
The weight room is where you win no matter which side of the ball you play on. If you got strong legs and you got a strong upper body and you tie it together with a good core, you're gonna be pretty good, especially with the conditioning protocol. But that's where he stood out, the weight room, and that's where we've always stood out, and people kinda caught on to that. You look at any football clinic now and you look at, other states. I know South Carolina's one. They got strength coaches.
Yeah.
It's a big deal, to have a strength coach, and high schools have started kinda tagging on to that, strength programs, go to a clinic in North Carolina, they've got a strength section, strength coach, they've got all these different programs that you can buy and get for programming your weightlifting classes and tracking maxes, and there's about 1,000,000 different ways to train a muscle group, but it all boils down to hard work.
Yeah.
And so that was a big thing that we're, and Charlie was big on the weight room.
Yep.
Coach Dempsey was big on the weight room. He understood that. And so I'm just kind of following in those footsteps of the weight room's got to be priority. And after that, you just play simple football.
Yep.
You can line up and not saying if you're the strongest group, you're gonna win, but it sure don't hurt you none,
Yeah.
and so then you add a couple of wrinkles here and a couple of wrinkles there, and you might have stand a chance.
Yeah. Let's you're sitting there talking about the weight room. So let's talk about for this that in a second. That's pretty much your role in the school. That's what you do whenever you're teaching is and it's a lot of football guys. You got the fourth period weightlifting with all the football guys. So my question is how important to you is that you get that ability to be with that guys for that period to help them lift and that this is the off season right now and arguably is the most important time of the year, but that does carry into football season when you do have the fourth period weightlifting. You can take that directly into football practice, game, whatever it is.
Yeah. So, and it goes into the culture piece. And luckily I've got an admin team and a school that understands, the role that plays, right?
Yep.
So back, I don't know, you go back 15 years, you didn't have the distractions that kids have these days.
Right.
And I hate to use that, but there's a lot of distractions. Look at the Southwest area. There's a lot of distractions now physically without even role of a cell phone or a iPad or a video game. And so, you know, and you look at the type of work kids do now. When I was coming up, baling hay, cutting grass, roofing, kids would work on the farm, kids were doing whatever they did, but it was all outside in the heat of the summer and in the coldness of the winter, and you had guys that had calluses on their hands and they blue collar. And now you look and I've got a lot of guys who are working at Walmart, working inside of restaurants, there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong, but it's a different line of work. It's a different level of work, and it's not that old calloused blue collar mindset. So when you take that out, you've got to replace it with something because football's a toughness. It's a sport. No matter how evolved we get, it boils down to who wants it more and who's going to be tougher, meaner, and nastier.
Yep.
And more now than ever, the meaner and nastier teams usually come out on top because most people nowadays don't want anything to do with that. They want to play ball like they see on TV,
Yeah.
where everybody makes a nice clean hit and help each other up and go back to the respective huddles, and everything's nice and clean and crisp, and that's nice, but that's not us. That's
Right.
not Southwest football. But so you got to make that culture in somehow. So that's what we're doing weightlifting.
Yeah.
You've got to make a culture where, one, you want to be there. Two, when you're there, you're working, and if you're not, you're gonna get called out, and it's maybe not for you, and that's okay. It may not be for you, but you gotta wanna be there and be in it, and, so that's what we've done in the weight room is, when you're in there, you're working. You got a goal, and that's to win football games, and my goal is not just to win football games, but the way they're attacking football is the way they should be able to attack obstacles later on in life, because one day, this old Coach Paget one that I've always used is, when your dog gets run over and you get to call your grandma died and your wife runs off with the drummer, what you gonna do? Because you can sit down and cry, but how long can you do it before life hits you again?
Yeah.
So you just got to learn how to be tough. You got to learn how to just take it, and yeah, you get through it.
Yeah.
And you get better.
Yeah. This will be the last part of this, and the last question of this segment that I'll ask. Kind of tying into that distraction part of it, what you were just talking about, and how different the almost lifestyle and work style it is for these guys. You just were just talking about how there was more maybe outdoor work and than there is now, and there is nothing wrong with that. But in a head coach's eyes, how do you adapt to that as you growing up and with a certain lifestyle to now having to adapt and coach kids that it is a completely different lifestyle for them?
Well, and I mean, I grew up in a very good household, so I'd never pretend to be anything I'm not. I grew up with parents that both worked. We took vacations, and I never had to worry about where I was going to lay my head and what
Yeah.
I was going to eat. But kids have always had that, in our area. But it's the biggest thing that I've noticed is not so much the line of work they do, but how they attack the work,
Yeah.
and a big thing since COVID, and it's everywhere, talking to other coaches. But with the phone, and you play the video games. I don't know any of them, but you get mad on a video game that night. You can just say, "Well, I'm done with this," and put it down and go back to it tomorrow, or pick up another game, and you can leave that game. You can go to another game, and
Yeah.
now you can win in that one, and we gotta do the hard stuff because maybe I left that one. Those guys know how to play, but these guys don't, so I'm gonna go play with them.
Right.
And it's kinda like the old saying of, "Well, I'm gonna take my ball and go home,"
Yeah.
So that's the biggest transition I've seen, since I've been back coaching. And that's what we've got to kinda weed out, is no matter who we play, no matter what you go through, because you don't get that in life.
Right.
And, so just helping these guys kinda forge that identity of toughness, kinda forge that identity of, you don't always get to pick your cards. Sometimes
Right.
you just got to play through a bad hand, take your losses, and make up for it the next hand.
Yeah.
Um, but I think the big thing is, no matter what you do, right? We've got guys that have graduated in the last couple of years that are accountants, that come from blue collar backgrounds. I had a guy that would cut grass, and he did odds and even now he's an accountant, and then other guys who maybe didn't work in high school and now they're owning a landscaping business,
Yeah.
So that's the big thing there, just getting them to understand it don't matter what you do, you just got to pick something and get good at it,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's awesome. All right. So you are going to participate in the infamous game that we play on here, and we call it the 2-minute drill. So, and I'll explain it just for you or for anybody that hasn't seen this before. The 2-minute drill is basically rapid fire, but I give it the name 2-minute drill, and obviously you know what a 2-minute drill is. But on here, it's just basically I'll set a timer. It's a 2-minute timer on my phone, and I've got a list of 100 different rapid fire questions, and you'll pick 5 numbers, space them out,
All right.
and then your just goal is to answer all 5 before the 2 minutes runs out.
All right, let's roll.
All right, let's do it. We'll start the 2 minutes in 3, 2, 1. What is your first number?
All right, let's go with number 12.
Number 12. Are you a texter or are you a caller?
I'm gonna call you. I'm an 80-year-old man.
Okay.
Thumbs can only go so fast.
What's your second number?
Let's go with 17.
17. Pizza or burgers?
Where's the pizza from?
I don't know. I'm just working with what I got. Okay, let's say the pizza is from Empire and the burger is from, you get a Freddy's burger if you've had Freddy's before.
I've never had Freddy's, so let's go with
a basic burger or somewhere.
Well, I don't need out much. Let's go with Empire Pizza.
Okay, all right. What's your third number?
Break the diet. Let's go with 24.
24. What is the last thing that you Googled?
The last thing that I Googled. I want to say it was a piece of weightlifting equipment for the weight room.
That sounds about right. What's your fourth number?
Fourth number, 6.
Number 6. Oh gosh, I can't wait to hear this one. Your go-to fast food order. I can't not wait to hear this one.
We're gonna go to Hardee's.
Okay.
And we're gonna get so if I can go to Sneed's Ferry Hardee's in time, I'm getting a fried chicken basket.
Okay.
If I can't if I'm in the mood for some chicken, I go to Church's Chicken.
Okay. All right.
But if I'm going to Hardee's, I'm getting a Frisco burger. And we're going with that. And maybe an apple pie if I'm really being adventurous off my diet.
Okay. All right. Your final number.
Let's go with 94.
94. Favorite type of weather?
Oh, that's easy. So November.
Oh, yeah.
About first, second week of November. Highs in the 40s with a north wind about 6 to 7 miles an hour. All right. And I want the lows to be in the 20s because that's and cloudy, mist and rain, cloudy, because that is big buck weather all day long.
That sounds about right for you. Well, technically you did it. You did answer it before the 2 minutes went out. So you completed it. All right, cool. All right, so then this is the other game that we like to play with everybody else. So I call this gas station pick me up.
Okay.
And so basically to set the scene, you're on a long drive. Let's say you're on a drive to the mountains, okay? 6-hour drive around there. You stop like right in the middle of your way up there.
Okay.
Fill up the truck real fast, but you need to pick me up.
Okay.
And you're walking in a gas station, you can grab a drink and you can grab a snack of any kind.
Gotcha.
What are you grabbing?
I'm getting an orange rain.
Yep.
Orange dreamsicle rain.
I could have guessed that.
The gate. And then the green jalapeno Cheetos.
The green jalapeno Cheetos. That sounds brutal. But gosh.
It meshes well with the drink. It's just great. It's a great drive. I've done it every time. It's just go to the mountains, go on a hunting trip, whatever. Get you there every time.
All right. Well, hey, okay. This is an interesting one. So I've got kind of like 2 dream scenarios here for football wise. Okay. And the first one is if you could be, and I feel like I have a good guess of what this answer would be, but if you could play or be part of any past football team, period, and we're talking it can be high school, it can be a college team, or it can be NFL, what team would you want to be a part of?
So we're talking if I was on the team?
You could be on the team. Doesn't matter what your role is.
Okay. If I could be on any team. That's a tough one because there's a lot of good runs. There's a lot of good teams. I don't know. I think I'd have to go with one of those Jimmy Johnson's Miami teams back there with like Ray Lewis and Michael Irvin and all those guys,
That was nasty. That was nasty.
Did a lot of good stuff. And if it wasn't on that, maybe with Barry Switzer down in Oklahoma. About the same time frame, A lot of fun in the 80s.
Okay. My guess was I thought you were going to say the undefeated Dolphins team.
Well, yeah, I mean, that would be good, but I don't know. I didn't grow up watching that era,
Okay, that makes sense.
I didn't grow up in the 80s either, but I liked watching.
Just go back and watch it. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. All right, this is a cool question. So you're building, you are building a staff for high school football, and you've already got a staff, but let's say that you could bring any coach onto your staff that you got at the high school right now. Okay. Who is the dream coach that you could, and it again could be from any era of football, who is the coach that you would bring to be part on your staff?
I can narrow it down to one. But obviously, being an Alabama guy, I'd have to go Nick Saban.
Oh, yeah.
Bear Bryant, bring those guys on. We'd go ahead and just win everything.
Oh, yeah.
But if I couldn't get them, maybe they're in a contract, right?
Yeah.
I think I'd have to go with Don Shula.
Okay.
72 Dolphins.
Yep.
Go with Don Shula. And, if maybe he was tied up, I maybe would just call up Jimmy Johnson.
Okay. That's never a bad option.
He could get recruiting going for me.
Heck yeah. That was going to be a tough question because there are a lot of good pass coaches.
You can't narrow it down to one.
No.
Maybe you can, but I can't. There's just so
No, I feel that 100%. This is kind of where we our closing segments, kind of the winding down and everything. This is where I really like to kind of ask people a lot of in the future questions and everything. So,
Gotcha.
but that's hilarious. But I have one question on here that that's not in the future, but I did not ask you this yet, but it doesn't even have to do with football. But why did you become a teacher?
So it's funny enough, they did the yearbook stuff right before we got out for Christmas. And that was
Yeah,
one question. I was like, man, that's a tough one. But like I said, my parents all grew up, I grew up watching them teach and I grew up in a schoolhouse. And I think the only thing about it is number one, more importantly, it's a great job to have a family,
yeah,
right? I get all the holidays, I get plenty of time, ample time to, be with my daughter, be with my wife and
yeah,
spend time with them. And, the hours are good, pay, everybody always complains about the pay, but I've never really had to worry about much, and so it's just a good job. It's a family-oriented job. Obviously, there's trade-offs, but, that's one reason. The other reason was, I was like, "Well, if I'm gonna teach, I'm a coach,"
yeah,
and never set out to coach, but obviously I had a lot of good coaches along the way, Coach Paget, but had, Coach McLeod, Dave McLeod, and
yeah,
Tommy Barnes, and Mark Price, and, Jeff Whitehead, and Charlie Dempsey, and just had a lot of good Eric Cleaver, Tommy Tucker, a lot of good
yeah,
coaches along the way that, just kinda showed me, there's a lot of things out there. And then, you get to my age and, you kinda have an avenue, you either work for a living, and work and, make a lot of money if you can, and take care of yourself, or if you go into teaching, you have the opportunity to take care of your family, but also impact kids that maybe don't have anything when they leave those walls. And that's,
yeah,
I think, probably the thing that sticks with you the most when you do it. I don't think modern day wise, I think maybe in the back in the day to a degree, I don't think you can exist in education for long periods of time if you don't do it for the kids.
right.
Because I mean, you're not doing it for the money, and everything else about it is good, but, I think you gotta really do it for the kids, even the
Yeah.
coaching aspect, there's a lot of things that if you really sat down and looked at it, everybody thinks it's this, that, and the other, but you gotta really love kids and you gotta really love what you do to stick with it. So that's kinda what keeps me in it, that's kinda what keeps driving me, and feel like that's where God's got me right now, and that's kinda why I'm there.
Amen to that. Well, this next question kind of ties into what I just asked you, and maybe you kind of answered this already, but in case there's any more that you want to add and anything else that maybe came to your mind, but what is your favorite part of working with the school as a teacher and also as a coach?
Well, I like, it's kind of funny. When I was in the classroom, and I say classroom, as far as teaching science,
Yeah.
I got to interact with everybody.
Right.
I think at one point there wasn't many kids in the school I didn't know. And I love knowing everybody. I'm a people guy, and I just like seeing all different kids, whether they play sports or not. And they'd come into my class, and I'd get to meet them and know them and help them, and impact others. On the peripheral side of things. So, it's fun.
Yeah.
It's a fun job. You get to impact lives and, there's always bad days, but that's life.
Right. Yeah. Going back to the football thing, and this is really kind of where we look into the future here, but speaking to the people that are watching at home, what should they expect from your football team this upcoming season?
Yeah, so one of the big things that we've kind of talked about what our identity is gonna be, right? Because I think that's step 1 in winning. You gotta have an identity. So, obviously, I want us to be pretty mean and tough.
Yeah,
That's a football thing. That's a guy thing. I wanna be
yeah,
mean. I wanna be nasty inside the lines. But the big thing is when they leave those lines, or even when the play is dead, we should have people saying that's a class act.
yeah,
I want to be disciplined. Everything you do in life boils down to discipline. If you ever get injured and you can't work out, you're gonna gain a little bit of weight. So you got to be disciplined that when you do get to start working out again, that you power through that initial pain. Because once you get out of something, it's very hard to get back into it. And so discipline will take you everywhere in life. So that's, one thing. So just being a very disciplined, tough, but respectful and class act kind of individual is kind of what I hope to mold
yeah,
and as far as the team goes.
yeah,
But other than that, I want people to come watch and enjoy it, because there's been a lot of games where you might win, but it wasn't enjoyable. I want it to be I wanna go watch those guys every Friday. They're gonna play in Washington County. We're gonna load up, we're gonna drive
We're
to
gonna drive
Washington,
up
we're gonna
there.
go watch those guys. And we may not win,
Yeah,
but I want people to walk away saying, "Man, they are fun to watch. They play
yeah,
their butts off, they play hard, and they play like their hair's on fire,"
yeah,
and that's kinda what our identity is gonna be, and, that's what I want our identity to be anyway. That's what I want, but it's gotta be a desire from the ones who are playing it now,
yeah,
and that's my job to get them there.
yeah. Well, I kind of touched on this question a lot earlier, but I'll kind of go back here because I think it does go with what we're talking about here with this upcoming season. But we talked about already the people who expect certain things from the team and maybe are expecting wins rather than seeing an actual good football team that goes out there and fights every single night. And I'll say this on behalf of you because I said this as well on my show that I just did with a ton that will be already out by the time this one drops. But you go to the games and you hear certain people and what they think, and you know, as stressful and as yeah, as stressful as I'm sure that is to hear as a coach, because I mean, 100% you want to see those teams do as good as the other people do. But what do you say to the people that maybe just are that yes are expecting that greatness right out of the gate and maybe are trying to be a little impatient and that really just should be the ones that kind of you just want to kind of sit back and watch this team grow and this new program that is under you grow along the way.
Well, I think you gotta look at it through both sides. Um, we've always been good,
Yeah.
and now we haven't been, and there's some things to it, but at the end of the day, I don't take it personal. I don't think you can. If you're in my line of work, you can't take things personal.
Yeah.
And like I tell people, I remember I come back year after I graduated, Coach Patrick was still coaching, right? And I was sitting in the stands. I'd gone up to sit with somebody, visit with them, and game was still going on, and they were calling him all sorts of names, and every time he called one play, they'd say he should have done this, and when he
Yeah.
did that, they shouldn't have done that. So and early on, and then getting into coaching, and even I talked with Coach Patrick a little bit, before he passed, and it you're never gonna make the right play. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
just look at every level.
Yeah.
I mean, and when you look at our world, it kinda ties into the technology aspect. We're very impatient. We're
Yeah.
a very impatient world right now, and that's part of our problem.
Yeah.
The worst thing that ever happened was same day delivery. Because holy crap, UPS was supposed to deliver my pack of whatever today, and they were held up. How dare they?
Yeah.
So that's you just kinda couple reality with what you're living in and what you can do, and you just try to give people the best product you can. And I get it. I want to go out there. Trust me, every offensive play is designed to score.
Yeah.
I think about every play we've ever ran is
One
scored at
hundred
least
percent.
once. So, but every defense is designed to stop that play.
Yeah.
So, obviously we want to go out and win. I ain't never gone out in the game and said, well, we might can win, but I hope we just play good. I've always wanted to win.
Yeah.
So I can understand it, but I don't listen to it.
Yeah.
You can't listen to it. It used to be you could write a letter to the editor, and that was how they complained, and now they can get on and 24/7 and hatch what they wanna say about you in the same breath,
Yeah.
before they stop and kinda mull over if it's a legitimate thought or what. So, I don't blame them. I don't have any malcontent with it. It's kinda like I said, pressure's a privilege,
Yeah.
and that's what makes this job special. You got to respect it.
Yeah.
It's not just a job, it's not just a team, it's not just a sport, it's Southwest football.
Yeah.
It's not other football programs. It's not any other school in the county or in the state. It's Southwest.
Yeah.
We're still on the leaderboard for all-time wins, and that's
Yep.
something that the guys see every day because I put it up in the weight room, and I told them, I said, "That's at risk if
Yeah.
we don't fix this thing, if we don't right this ship." And, so, that instant success, I kinda told some people when I got it, and, I got some calls and people kinda acting like it was just gonna happen
Happen. Yeah.
last year. And it goes hand in hand with that group I had. I love them to death, but culture is the biggest builder, and you don't fix a culture in one season.
Yep.
It's something that has to grow, and then it has to take on its own identity. And as much as I want it, as much as other coaches want it, as much as other fans want it, we're not the ones padding up on Fridays.
Yep.
You know, it's not our mindset that goes on the line when the whistle blows.
Yep.
So that's what has to happen, you know,
Yeah.
and that's where my job steps in, getting that culture to grow, getting the players to embrace it and start to tend it more than I do some days,
Yeah.
you know, because when you start getting your players to do the job and they're pushing the culture and they're holding guys accountable, and then that's when you start seeing the transition
For sure.
because that's what we always had.
Yep.
You know, you always had that at Southwest. You know, now coach would have to rip us every once in a while,
Oh
you
yeah.
know, but that's human nature.
Yep.
But there was a standard that you didn't dip below, you know,
Yeah.
because if you did, there's a couple guys waiting on you in that locker room. There's a couple guys waiting on you in that weight room. And if you made it out to practice and still had that chip on your shoulder, somebody's gonna knock it off and we are gonna fix it before we went home that night.
Yep.
You know, and that's what we've got to grow that culture back.
Yeah.
So, you know, it doesn't bother me. Obviously, there's nights and there's days where it's worse than others,
Yeah.
you know, and again, you know, I had to remind myself where I am, where I'm from, what I'm a part of, and you just expect it. And if it wasn't to be there, that'd be a warning flag. It's kind of like that whole phrase of when the coach stops getting on you, you better start being worried
Yeah.
because it's no longer a priority for them.
Yeah. This is the second to last question that I have for you, and this is I feel like this is a big personal question for you, but just looking way down the line. I mean, I hope that you're lucky to do this for a while, be the head coach. But when you've coached your final game and that day comes and you're able to look back at what you did, what is the thing that you want to look back on and be the most proud of, and that you want people to remember Zach Garvey for the most?
Well, obviously, I want to win, you know, but there's a whole layer to winning, and it's I want them to at least know we did it the right way, right? You know,
Yeah.
I want people to be able to look back and say, man, whoever left that program, you know, they gained more than just a win or just a ring or just a shirt or just
Yep.
wins, you know. And it may not, like I've told kids in the past, it may not be evident right out the gate after graduation, but there's going to be a time in your life where you're going to have to revert back to how things happen and what you were trained to do and what you were raised to do. And I hope that I just, you know, can play a small part that when somebody goes through a rough patch, they can revert back to something we said, whether it was me or a coach on my staff or another player that was kind of emboldened and kind of grew in our program, something from the Southwest program that will help them be better fathers and husbands and sons and citizens down the road. You know,
Yeah.
that's what I want it to be about. Whenever you see these, you know, Coach Paget and Coach Eason at Northside, and you know, you look, you know, around the area and in the state, any coach that is revered and talked about, Coach Holly, that Coach Paget, you know, revered and loved a lot, you know,
Yeah.
Jack Holly, not Battle same way though.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, Coach Holly down at East Duplin right now. You know, you talk about those guys, and there's a respect beyond the field.
Yeah.
You know, and if I'm lucky enough to do it long enough, I hope I can emulate that. You know,
Yeah.
I hope I can personally grow to where I can do that kind of thing. You know, and not for the clout and not for the wins and not for the name recognition, but because if I'm doing it for the reason I feel like I'm doing it, and
Yeah.
it's for whatever purpose God has me there for, then if I do it the right way, then it will lead more people, one, to God,
Yeah.
and two, to living a life that makes this community or wherever they go better.
Yeah.
You know, because I always like, you know, wear Southwest stuff when I go on trips out of state or in state or places because I just like people to see the Southwest name.
Yeah.
And I want them to associate it with something good, you know. So, because you never know, you know, like I've been in Florida before and people have stopped and talked about Southwest football. You
Yeah.
know, and I don't know them, they don't know me, you know,
Right.
but they knew about Southwest football, you know, and so that's kind of what we want to get back to having here, just a class act program that kind of leaves people better than we found them or they found us.
Yeah, that's awesome. This is the last question that I asked every single guest that I have on this show, and I feel like it's the most important question because I think the best thing one of the best things in life that you can do is look back and be thankful for things. And I always ask people, what are three things in your life that you're currently thankful for. So I'm going to ask you right now in this moment, what are 3 things in life that you're
3
currently
things
thankful
I am
for?
currently thankful for. Well, the first would be obviously my faith with
Yeah.
God, knowing Him. The second thing will be my family, my wife and my daughter, and then obviously my parents and my family like
Yeah.
that. And the third thing is just the ability to be here. I went duck hunting the other morning, and it wasn't a good day of duck hunting. I knew it wasn't going to be a good day of duck hunting, but you know, I just the ability just to get up and do the things I do on a daily
Yeah.
basis because it's going to come to an end one day. Everybody gets old and
Yep.
everybody gets broke down, and just the ability to get up and lift and walk and hunt and coach and teach and talk and just the abilities I have. I think we look past that. There's a couple people in our community hurting right now,
Yeah.
for various reasons and different things. And so sometimes it just makes you really thankful for what you have. Cause I don't know of anything material that I can take with me one day. And I
Yeah.
don't know of anything material that comforts me more than those 3 things right there.
Amen to that. Well,
So
I want to first of all just thank you so much for doing this. This was a really good interview. This is one that I was looking forward to the most. But
hopefully not too much editing.
oh no, you're good. But most importantly, with me being a senior, I want to thank you for everything that you've done for me the last 4 years and everything, and what you continue to do for the program. And that was one of the big reasons that I wanted to have you on this show, to go ahead and just share a bunch of that stuff and show people that there are good things that are going to come for this program. So I appreciate you coming on and
Yeah.
sharing a little bit of insight
I
that you got
definitely
for us.
appreciate you having me.
Yeah, man,
Been
100%.
fun.
Yep. And thank you to you guys for watching. Please subscribe and follow all the different social links that we have. I will link all those in the description down below, but be sure to stay tuned. The Locker Room comes out every single episode, every single week that we have new guests on in the Preston Kelly Show. We're starting that back. I dropped the first one here a couple weeks ago, but we're starting it back, getting that back on there. So much content to be made, and I will be right here to bring it all to you. But until then, we will see you guys in the next episode.
Hit that little red button right there.
Hit it.
Right there.
Hit